Scuderia Ferrari narrowly missed the podium in the 2024 Formula One Belgian Grand Prix, with Charles Leclerc finishing fourth on track at Spa-Francorchamps. This consideration reflects the race result and driver impressions post-race, without considering George Russell's disqualification, as his Mercedes W15 car was found underweight in the FIA inspection after the checkered flag. Therefore, Charles Leclerc still gets a podium, which on-track slipped away especially in the last stint when he lost pace against the two Mercedes W15 cars of Lewis Hamilton and George Russell, and also against the McLaren of Oscar Piastri, who perhaps woke up a bit too late. The Monegasque driver certainly had a good race overall, considering the difficulties of the SF24 single-seater, especially in the final part when the phenomenon of bouncing resurfaced as the car became lighter on fuel. The Belgian Grand Prix was still very exciting, with the top six within 10 seconds. George Russell did something incredible with a single stop, but it was all nullified by the disqualification, while Lewis Hamilton was effectively thwarted by the team, which called him in despite him explaining that he still had plenty of tire life left. A straightforward race for Max Verstappen, confirming that the RB20 is no longer as dominant as it was in the start of the 2024 Formula One season, while Lando Norris in sixth ruined his race at the start once again. Overall, Scuderia Ferrari must be satisfied with Charles Leclerc's performance at the 7.004-kilometer circuit de Spa-Francorchamps on Sunday. The Monegasque driver showed a race pace that was similar to that of Lewis Hamilton for almost the entire Grand Prix, except in the final laps, when he still managed to hold off the charging Max Verstappen and Lando Norris, who were making great progress at that moment. Charles Leclerc managed the hard tires excellently, and even with the mediums at the start, he kept pace with his future Ferrari teammate. Nonetheless, Charles Leclerc is disappointed not to have secured a podium on track. He expressed that he couldn't be too happy with the race as they had expected to be on par with Mercedes, but ended up finishing behind them. On the positive side, they managed to keep the two Red Bull cars and a McLaren behind. In terms of tires and strategy, the Maranello pit wall had expected more graining on the hard tires, which instead worked well, while they struggled more with the mediums. The Monegasque driver reflected on their strategy, thinking initially that they had stopped too early for the first pit. However, in hindsight, the hard tires proved very effective, and a single-stop strategy might have been the best option, as demonstrated by George Russell. Overall, the Ferrari driver felt they did a good job staying ahead of Max Verstappen. Although he had hoped for a better result before the break, he was at least confident that he had squeezed all the potential out of the SF24 car. On the other hand, Carlos Sainz's Belgian Grand Prix was practically sacrificed at the start. Beginning the race on hards didn't seem like a logical move for a comeback, especially considering the middle stint with the mediums lasted just a few laps. In the end, the Spaniard did pass Sergio Perez, but starting on the yellow tires, he might have had a better progression and finished closer to his Maranello teammate. He mentioned that it was a tough race and explained that they had decided to start with a different strategy than everyone around them. Despite the fact that the start and the first stint were very good, they didn't have enough pace to capitalize on it. Reflecting on the 2024 Formula One Championship so far, the Ferrari driver noted that the first half had been challenging for many reasons, but expressed confidence that they would come back stronger after the summer break. He also thanked the fans for their support and looked forward to seeing them in Zandvoort. It was expected that the SF24 single-seater would struggle at the Spa-Francorchamps circuit, yet the pace shown on Sunday, especially by Charles Leclerc, was not bad at all. Clearly it's not enough, judging the car once again as the third or fourth force on track. All things considered, Red Bull didn't have a great pace today. While the Mercedes W15 car was quite surprising, the 2024 Formula One Championship is thrilling and goes on a break. We'll see if the Maranello technicians can gather their thoughts to present themselves better for the last European doubleheader, especially at the Monza circuit in front of the Tifosi, with developments that can make a qualitative leap for the SF24 car, which has unfortunately clearly regressed over time. The fourth place obtained by Charles Leclerc, which then became a podium after the steward's decision regarding George Russell's car being found underweight during checks, has left an opposite atmosphere in the Ferrari camp. On one hand, Charles Leclerc said he was disappointed because he expected at least to have the pace to fight with the Mercedes cars, while on the other hand, Frederic Vasseur is optimistic about the result secured in the Belgian Grand Prix, even though on the track, they did not even reach the podium despite starting from pole position. The most disappointing aspect is that among the top 3 finishers, there was only one potentially faster car, Oscar Piastri's. While it is true that George Russell surprised everyone with his one-stop strategy, the fact that they could not compete with Lewis Hamilton is the aspect that weighed the most in a race from which Charles Leclerc himself expected more. On Friday, Ferrari seemed in the running for the podium, but the changes made by Mercedes overnight from Friday to Saturday paid off, helping the drivers achieve a win within reach with both of its drivers. Indeed, beyond George Russell's surprise, Lewis Hamilton led the race after taking the lead in the early laps, always managing to maintain a safety margin. However, Frederic Vasseur is satisfied with the pace shown, especially in the first 2 stints, during which Leclerc contended for the victory longer, staying within 3 seconds of the gap. A gap that would have clearly made it difficult to come up with something in the last stint without a pace advantage, but still not so large after more than half the race. The fact is that throughout the Grand Prix, those tenths were missing to keep the first position gained on Saturday. The French manager commented that while the maximum result was uncertain, the performance was good. He noted the surprising low degradation of the hard tires and the high consumption of the mediums, while also pointing out that George Russell executed the perfect strategy, intentionally or not, resulting in everyone finishing within 10 seconds. The Ferrari team boss explained that everyone experienced huge degradation on the mediums, except for the first laps when they were managing, but once they had to push, like Sergio Perez in the second stint, they quickly returned to the pits. At the beginning of the race, managing the pace made the situation seem better than it actually was. Only in the last part of the Belgian Grand Prix did the gap increase significantly, rising to almost 8 seconds at the end, affected by overtaking by Oscar Piastri and having to defend against Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. Frederic Vasseur highlighted that it was more about how the stint was managed and the unexpected degradation. He added that while the pace remained consistent, a few tenths were lost due to ongoing battles rather than degradation. Despite the final result favoring Mercedes, Fred Vasseur reiterated his satisfaction with Charles Leclerc's performance. He expressed a preference for a double finish over 4th place, but acknowledged that in terms of performance, they found a good pace. Moving forward, he emphasized the need to fine-tune a couple of tenths and put everything together for the next race. On this last point, Frederic Vasseur reviewed the first part of the 2024 Formula One season, with what should be the goals for the second part of the championship. The bouncing problem has been somewhat contained compared to what was seen in the Spain-Austria-Great Britain trio, a sign that the updates brought to Budapest have somehow helped to reduce the problem, even if it has not been completely eliminated. Ferrari's hope is that the new updates coming in the second part of the championship will allow them to make a small but crucial step forward to put the SF24 in the fight to seize opportunities like today. For now, Frederic Vasseur believes that compared to 12 months ago, the Maranello team has made significant progress. He noted the positive development of having 4 teams fighting for podiums and victories, which is beneficial for the Formula One championship. The Frenchman emphasized that everything is open for the second part of the season, as even a small improvement of 1 or 2 tenths can make a big difference.